I'm Brandon, and we are having the GTO. Today's episode, if I can adjust everything here correctly, today's episode we are talking about strategies for greening the desert. So I think more specifically, we're going to talk a little bit about the strategies that we're implementing here on the property and kind of the goals and the outlook a little bit that we have. And just to kind of start with, at least, I had already done the video kind of going over the classifications of what a desert is and showing that where we're positioned in northern Arizona here, we're kind of in this transition zone between or just having the mix of desert and kind of that higher elevation, wetter conditions you could think of, like Flagstaff and Williams and stuff like that. So we don't get that much rain. We are averaging about 12 to 14 inches of rain annually here, and that kind of varies. So we're actually kind of firstly taking note. I actually have been documenting just our rain catchment, just how much rain, that we're accumulating throughout the year. So that will be an ongoing process to see more specifically our area, our average that we get in the area at least. So that'll be a few years down the road that we'll know that. But the strategies, there are a whole lot of strategies when it comes to kind of regreening or rectifying just a damaged ecosystem you could think of. Excuse me. And the strategies that we're implementing on our property are pretty much going to be a good variety and a good diversity of things, which include rotational grazing, lots of compost tea, lots of organic material, which includes straw and hay. So, but when it comes to kind of the way that we're doing these things, everybody's going to have a different approach. Some people, might have more rain, and some people might have less, obviously. But I think the strategies that we're implementing and that just the amount of strategies and diversity of things that we can do, practices and whatnot, all of these apply to, I think, not only deserts, but also to even wetter climates as well, especially the earthworks. So I guess we can kind of start with that first strategy, which is all of these earthworks, which are meant for slowing, stopping, and soaking as much of the water, the sheet flow, as possible. And even in a wet climate, this actually is super beneficial because as much as in the desert here, we're wanting to collect and store the rain and have it soak into the ground, it's equally applied to even the wetter climates because having a lot of these earthworks actually will contribute to more moisture getting soaked into the ground, so further improvement of the soil and microbes and everything. But it also actually can be for controlling a lot of the moisture that people get that are in these wetter climates. So the earthwork strategy not only work in deserts, but also in wetter climates because they can serve these multiple functions. And when we're just talking wetter climates even, that's where we can get more into the flood prevention, just diverting water where we need it and want it to go, essentially, or at least kind of preventing a lot of just flooding on a property in general or around a home or homestead. But for our sake here in the desert, that's where we have a monsoon season. And so we're looking at the intensity of rain that we get in a short amount of time. And so that's where these earthworks really come into play in stopping and slowing a lot of this sheet flow. And the evidence that we can see on the property is a lot of these bare areas, these gaps through the trees and just the bare soil, I guess, if you wanted to even call it that. It's still soil because there's still life going on, so technically speaking. But for what we have, we really see the evidence of the intensity of the rain and how much water is actually flowing or sheet flowing across a lot of these areas. And so we can see that as contributing really high what am I trying to say? It just really contributes greatly to the aspect of why the area is bare, why nothing is able to grow or take hold. And then it's also just the evidence we have looking at the property and the vegetation as well as the trees and stuff. We can get all the evidence we need a little bit of the path of the water, and just, where it's maybe a bit more intense, and a lot more of these gathering points where it's more sedimenty and stuff like that. So these earthworks not only are helping with that soil, or with the rain and slowing down the water and stuff, we're actually looking at preventing a lot more erosion just because of the mounds that we're doing. And that's what a little bit of a misconception that we have right now, is that we're done with all of the earthworks, and this is, now we're just waiting for the rain to fill them up, which is far from the truth. We actually have way more to do. That's kind of one big thing that we've done with the earthworks so far, is that these have all just contributed to the Gabion Wallopini. So it's been crucial in kind of this interconnected building process that we have here, that the structure was built with the natural materials. And so the solution was pretty much digging a lot of the outlines and kind of the rough sketches of the earthworks that we needed for the material for building on the Gabion. But in return, what we get is a lot of the outlines and kind of the perspective of, the what we've done essentially. And actually going through the monsoon season last year and seeing all of the rain, I mean, that's super important for video documentation, even not just for content, but for my own sake, because now I can look back on all of those videos and really see where a lot of the water was flowing, where, if the earthworks were actually working as intended, maybe, improvements in some areas where I didn't consider before. So that's a little bit, with these strategies. That's why it's always advised, you really should be living or visiting your property pretty frequently, and at least for a year, so that you have a way better idea of the weather patterns, the climate, just the amount of sun, the conditions of the soil, the rain and stuff like that. So these are all these are important factors to consider for the strategies, because we can use these strategies in a good way, but also we can use them in the wrong way as well if we're not observing. Because there's a time and place for a lot of them. And that's why you'll see on our property, it's a diversity of earthworks. It's a diversity of, these different practices and techniques. And it's not just a one solution kind of orientation, where some people are thinking, the demi-lunes, just do the demi-lunes. And it's like, no, that's one simple answer. And that's actually coming from a different country altogether, with different climate, different weather patterns, different soil conditions, different people, different cultures. So I think that's one thing to consider when we're implementing these strategies, is that there's so many different designs to them when we look at the different cultures, but there's really the basic concepts, which is, either slowing and stopping water, or getting water gathered up and soaked in, or gathering organic material to use for topsoil and stuff like that. So I think that kind of goes with the earthworks as well. It's, not only slowing and stopping the water, but these earthworks are helping to build up the soil on the property, because they are feeding the microorganisms, especially with the sediment and organic material that gets washed into them. We also have high wind, because we're a high mountain desert. So we do get a little bit more intense winds than other places. So we do have a lot of dust and a lot of sediment and organic material that gets blown around, which these swales, as well as the basins and the half moon structures, I just call them basins. People could call them half moons, but all these things are also catching sediment and organic material. So they're preventing a lot more of erosion. At least a lot more, they're preventing a lot more of the topsoil that's on our property from leaving the property. So that's kind of the benefit of why we have the earthworks we have, but also why we're building more. But also at the same time, it's, the size and the depth of a lot of the earthworks we're doing does definitely matter, because we don't necessarily want to just dig huge, deep swales or basins all over the place. We want to be strategic, because especially if we just dig really deep basins or really deep swales all over, I mean, it becomes, not redundant, but it actually kind of takes away, because just kind of showing the example we have here is we're doing multiple smaller earthworks, so multiple swales, multiple basins, And actually, judging from the monsoon season last year, even during the most intense moment that we had, a lot of the swales didn't overflow. Nothing actually overflowed on the property. None of the swales or anything over got to the overfill point. So, in that being said, that kind of goes with the amount of earthworks we've done, because there's certain areas where the water was really flowing, but there wasn't many earthworks. There was maybe a couple, but then there's other spots that we have multiple earthworks stacked up and none of those overfilled, but we could see that there was water being gathered in each one. So that's kind of one thing, with the strategy. It's like implementing these strategies correctly, because if we were to just dig a bunch of big swales, and then they only fill up a little bit, that it kind of defeats the purpose of that. So we want to maximize the amount of water in each swale, but it's also, we want to maximize the surface area. So looking at the rain and the intensity and stuff, and just the size of the earthworks. So for our earthworks, even for how small they are, they didn't overfill, but what they did do is there was a lot more backfill essentially with the water, so it was backing up more into the hillside, kind of quote unquote, because it's still pretty flat up there. It's got a little grade to it, but everything's backing up, so it's soaking into more of the soil actually. So we're getting more water coverage. And I think, in my opinion at least, if you just dig really deep swales, you're just getting that concentration of water right there. So, and that's that big concentration of water. But we also have to acknowledge at the time, if my service here die out, but it will spread out, but it won't spread out the same as a more shallow swale, and the water is able to be stopped, and we have the exit at a certain point, but the water is able to backfill and actually go spread upwards and create more surface area coverage. So the earthworks, definitely one really huge major strategy, I think, for any property, whether you're desert or you've got more rain, high tropical, not high tropical, but just tropical kind of classification. So, and I think that actually leads, because we're, yeah, hey, Derek, Clydesdale, love the channel, appreciate it. Yeah, greening the desert elephant farm, 12 inches is not very much, but that's what we were dealing with in Montana, actually, 12 inches of rain annually. And we actually had our whole rainwater harvesting system. We had the multiple earthships and stuff, so we actually were increasing the amount of rain we were catching each year. But the last 7.5 years, we were catching and thriving, I guess, at least, off of solely rainwater. So we were able to water ourselves and a bit of the animals, at least a little bit. We did have to supplement for the garden, so we had to go to someone's well to get water for that. So that's kind of, when we're thinking of these strategies for greening the desert, that last video I did yesterday on Saturday here, talking about, just the square footage and how we can calculate how much potential rain we can catch. That's really something super crucial to consider, especially if we're thinking about solely rainwater harvesting for all of the needs here on the farm. And it's a big misconception people have too with the rainwater harvesting, because there's an aspect of personal usage, but then when we start thinking about the homesteading aspect, and it's like, now we're thinking about livestock, and then we're thinking about gardening, and if we're thinking about fruit trees, and the whole sustainable aspect, that rain catchment, we really have to up that. I think, for gardening and stuff, 80 to 90% of our water usage is going to be for gardening. So we can take our personal usage and we'll pretty much multiply that by 80 to 90%. That's how much more water we're going to need for the gardening season. And so the calculations really come into play, because now we can look at our whole property overall. We sit on 10 acres. And so if we look on the minimum scale of 12 inches of rain annually, we could scale that our property, our 10 acres, we have the potential to catch about 4.5 million gallons worth of water in a year. So with that being said, it's not like we want to cover the whole property with plastic and basins. That would just, that would defeat the greening the desert project purpose. But we can actually still calculate out what our needs are, and actually potentially the needs for the agricultural part. But that's also with the earthworks. That's why those are important, because those are going to help save on the water that we'll need for what's planted on those berms. So the fruit trees, the orchard that we're basically trying to start. So it kind of goes into, the goals aspect. We have the goal of creating not only a permaculture homestead, but a permaculture nursery where we can have the example of these earthworks and how we're slowing and stopping the water, rebuilding the soil and stuff like that. But also we can promote more of the diversity of vegetation that actually will thrive in this area. And so that kind of coupled with the earthworks, that just sets up for a better success rate, I think, at least. And not to mention, we're also taking kind of this neglect approach. So this is also another strategy, I guess, that we're implementing here. Not I guess, but this is a strategy we're implementing, is the neglect method a little bit. Just mainly because right now we've been working on the Gabion Wallapini. So the Gabion is super important because it's the greenhouse. It's the starting point for a lot of the trees and everything else we're really going to start growing. So the focus has been on this a lot. But after that, it's like the Gabion really will set us up for really trudging forward on everything else on the property with the vegetation and the trees and planting. But then that's why we've also, combined this strategy with, the sustainable building, because now that we've cut out and outlined all these earthworks, now we've got the process going for building soil, for stashing and storing more water, gathering more water, without us even having to think about it. So I just get to go out and film it basically and observe it. So that's the good part. I mean, that's how we can actually implement these strategies in a strategic way that work in our benefit, that work in a more lazy kind of neglectful way. And that just leads to why we're doing like the rotational grazing, because that also plays into the bigger picture of everything. So along with the earthworks, then we've got the rotational grazing, which we just have to basically move the animals on a daily or every other day basis, and then they obviously get fed. We don't have very much growing right now, so there's not much for the animals to graze on. But I actually have a video. I've already finished that up. I'm working on this series right now, the Greening the Desert project series, because that's going to kind of start soon. There's a little bit of a slowdown with the Gabion Wallapini as far as, we're going to get to further parts in it, but it's just at a slowdown where, there's not much to really like make a video out of it, kind of. So we've got the rocket stove coming up. That's going to be the last, I think, kind of in-house, like full video a little bit. But for those that don't know, we actually are inside. We've been inside for the last almost week now. So super nice, way better than the tent. Yeah, a little more stretch room, better temperatures, averaging 20 degrees warmer inside at overnight compared to outside. So even for this thing not even being all the way finished, there's still some air gaps, I'm sure. The cooling tubes we still need to plug up, but it's like we don't even have the stove in or anything quite yet. We're still finishing that. But I'm working on the video too, but I'm even still, it's like 20 degrees, 21 or 22 degree difference than outside. Way better, way better. Especially because it doesn't take much for the buddy heater to at least warm it up a little bit inside. But once we get this rocket stove, it's going to make a world of a difference. I'll tell you that. And it's going to be super cool. So we do have that. That video is going to be coming out next weekend. It's going to be, I think, a 2-part episode. So we'll kind of show how we're forming, and then Neka's doing a lot of the mudding and building up of the main rocket stove itself with the barrel. And then we'll kind of, it's a twist on the idea, because we're not using tubes or anything like that. And this is all from scratch. So you'll have to wait till next weekend to see what we're doing with the rocket mass heater bench. But that's also just a strategy in and of itself inside of the structure, because just the passive solar design we have with the Gabion, and then also coupling the rocket mass heater. So way more efficient than regular wood burning stoves. And then it also has its own mass because of the stove running through it. So that's going to absorb and then throw out heat into the structure, which it's not even, the structure itself isn't even cooling down that much, so there's not much for it to heat up. So there's a whole, I mean, I think I'll definitely have videos later on. We'll kind of go into just like the concepts and how everything works with this structure, and I'll show the temperatures and everything like that. But back on, we're on the rotational grazing. So I do have the video series coming on the Greening the Desert project. I'm working on that. There's also actually a side project I did take on, and it's kind of a bigger project, not as big as the Gabion, but I think it'll be good because it's starting fresh. So we'll be able to kind of show people, if you get on your property, you know, what some things you could look for, some ideas you can kind of get from just starting, and then there's kind of some other things. So I'll have the video later, kind of going over what we're doing with that. But the rotational grazing, super crucial. Montana already have, so we've been doing the rotational grazing for like 5 years now. And I've already seen the evidence, at least for myself, not only through videos and watching other projects, but for our own sake, because we used to sit on, part of our property was like connected to a farm field. And I don't know how they did the property lines or whatever, but a chunk of our property was in the middle of, or not in the middle, but on the edge of this farm field. And so we had to fence that off so he would stop farming it. So he was basically free farming, getting free, and he wasn't too happy when we fenced it off. But it was our property and we were able to do that. But what we did do, and what he even said, he's like, I had been farming this the last 50 years. You know, so this guy had been farming this whole, you know, tens of thousands of acres, huge acreage. But our little chunk at least was a good example. So we took this guy's little chunk, well, we took it over, took our property back over, and basically started from scratch. This guy had been tilling and spraying fungicides, insecticides, all that nasty stuff for 50 years. And so when you looked at this stuff, it was just crumbly. There was really nothing to it, just crumbly, barely any organic material. When it rained, it just washed away and it dried up like no other after a minute. All he was doing was dry farming. So he was growing winter wheat. So lots of wheat farming had been done on that property for almost a century, basically. Half a century, sorry. Not almost, but half a century. But we were able to rotate the goats and the chickens for 3 years on that chunk of farm field. And we actually were able to make that way more diverse and vegetated, and the diversity of vegetation that was growing was way greater than even the natural portion that had been fenced off and not farmed for years. So for me, you know, seeing that we were able to turn around farm field, you know, stuff that had been basically abused for years, and in a matter of 3 years, just from rotational grazing, you know, we were able to bring back the vegetation and just the life. You know, we started hearing crickets and birds were flying out there. So it's super cool. I luckily have the video. So if you want to look at that video footage before I start the Greening the Desert series, because that will be like the second video, I think, in the series. Or no, that might actually be the first video in this series. So I'm kind of undecided when that series is coming out. I think really soon. But if you do want to see kind of the evidence, you can go back in my old videos. Excuse me, the old videos I do show, I'm a little more talky and just show the camera moving and talking. But you'll get the idea of how we transformed that pretty much barren area from just barren, nothing growing, only the little wheat stalks, into really lush grass, pretty much filling in everywhere, and got to the point where we didn't have to buy feed, you know, at least for the goats. There was no feed needed for the goats at all because they were 100% grazing on everything that was growing in that field. And so we had created that positive feedback loop. And so that's a little bit what we're looking forward to here, especially when it's kind of, we've got so many other projects going on. So that's kind of the lazy approach a little bit. That's a little bit what I labeled that video. It's kind of the lazy person's approach to building dead desert soil. And that's where it is hands-on. You do have to move the animals and you have to figure out the system that you're going to do and stuff. But I mean, honestly, it's not like I'm having to rake and till up that soil and put stuff into it. I'm spreading out hay and straw and stuff like that. But it is keeping things on the minimal, but it's also just the scale that we're doing this at because we're covering acres worth with the rotational grazing. So we're covering acres with getting organic material stomped in to the ground along with the manure and the urine and everything else, all the goat pee and stuff, and then the chicken manure. So we're getting all of that. Everything's getting mixed in and tilled into the soil for free. Essentially, it's just costing us moving these animals and giving them that supplemental feed. But the overall goal in the end is to create more of an environment where we have more vegetation, so more vegetation for the for feed, so for the livestock feed, but then also we're creating habitat for more biology, just the macrobiology. So when we're looking at insects and birds and stuff like that, we're really going to start drawing in more of that, which in turn is going to feed all of the life that's here. So the chickens will eat a lot of the bugs and spiders and stuff like that. And that is a huge goal when we're looking at sustainability. Just the actions we're taking now, that's our ultimate goal, is to become self-sufficient in providing for the animals. So that's along with the rain catchment and then also the rotational grazing. So the strategy is here. I mean, we're really pulling out a whole arsenal of strategies and practices to kind of remediate this dead desert soil, if anyone wants to call it that. But I mean, for what we have, the conditions we have a caliche layer, which really shows that we have a high evaporation rate. Even after that snow that we got, I mean, everything is pretty dry. I think we got about 0.3 of an inch. So I'm trying to think of metric. That's less than, I think, a centimeter, isn't it? Something like that. Someone correct me or comment down below what the metric is on 0.3 of an inch, or like close, a little over a quarter of an inch. So not much was really penetrated into the soil. Actually, a lot of the spots where we did mulching and stuff, they still had moisture. But because of, you see the sun beaming on me, this is on the daily. We're in a state that has one of the highest amount of sun days in the United States, at least. We're looking at over 200 sun days. So that is a big aspect of our environment, is not just the temperature, but the amount of sun, because with every day that we get sun, that's that much more UVs and, radiation and evaporation that is happening. So that's where getting the organic material into the ground. But then also part of the strategy is slowly getting compost and then the cover crop seed along with like the native grass seeds and stuff like that. So I guess that kind of just leads, that's our next strategy, is that it's going to be a slower process because it actually involves me having to do stuff instead of just moving the goats. It's kind of that extra step where now we'll be throwing down compost. We'll be trying to, kind of mix the compost in a little bit. And then we'll actually be doing cover crops along with the native seed mixes. And actually, a video in the series that I'm going to be doing is talking about the Zuni waffle garden. So if anyone knows anything about the Zuni waffle garden, that's what we're going to be doing in one of the videos for this area that I'm kind of cultivating for doing a lot more of the medicinal plants and stuff like that. So I'm getting ready for all the medicinal plants to grow this season. Along with Neka's getting a lot more of her seeds, vegetable seeds and fruit seeds ready. I'm looking at a lot more fruit trees and just fruit stuff. So we are actually getting in the mode of considering a lot more of the vegetation that we're going to be growing this season. And now that we're inside, actually, we're in a bit better position to start considering a lot of this stuff. So, I mean, honestly, that is a strategy in and of itself right there, is how we've taken the approach that we have. And it's the first and foremost thing, which was building the Gabion Wallapini. And that's not only to get ourselves inside, to make ourselves comfortable, but that gives us now a better footing to actually put focus outside of the structure and kind of that survival mode that we were in of, wanting to get inside. But now we have a roof, we have coverage, we were catching rain or snow, and now we have a space that is staying warmer than the nighttime. So we are in a position to be able to start a lot of seeds and a lot of trees and stuff like that. So it's really nice to be able to start considering a lot of that stuff. And that's just part of that strategy. Like I'm saying, is building this up first because it's the shelter and everything else. So this is definitely important. But this also kind of entails, just like the earthworks, help build up the Gabion. So now that the Gabion is built up, the Gabion is going to help build up the rest of our landscape, essentially. So the law of mutual exchange, this is just, that's kind of a subliminal strategy almost, of working with nature, that this exchange that we're trying to do and work with, and how everything is trying to fit efficiently and effectively. I mean, this all gets into the planning, so it gets way more in depth on, the approach of the strategies. It's like we know the strategies, but now we can really tweak things and kind of intertwine a lot of these strategies so that things start playing off of each other, things start working for each other, and it requires less thinking on our part. At least, when things when the ball gets rolling, there's still some thinking involved. Don't get that wrong. But once we kind of get this system going, I mean, then this really starts becoming a positive feedback loop. Everything we've been doing up until now, like that's what permaculture is about. It's a permanent culturing. So all the things we're doing is the mimicry of nature. And we find that nature doesn't need compost or, compost teas sprayed and stuff like that. We just notice, we can observe that it functions. There's a system that works within itself, that keeps this cycle going season after season. And we can replicate that, but also kind of add into that replication a little bit of speediness to it is one aspect. So, I mean, the approaches, that's the thing. There's so many strategies. There's so many approaches. That's, I guess, why I don't have necessarily notes on any of this, because there is so many, and they all actually interconnect with each other, at least in my opinion, at least. And yeah, the interconnectedness to me is pretty important, because that's the only way. Well, I shouldn't say that's the only way, but it's, in my mind, it's a really efficient way of how we can mimic nature and actually still create a feedback loop that even when we're gone, things will still function, things will still be thriving and kind of be able to be left to its own kind of devices there. So if anyone has any questions, I've been rambling on for a minute. I haven't looked too much on there, but green in the desert on the elephant farm, if you dug a large pit at the top, once you get a plume going down underground, yeah, that is a big aspect of why we've been really focused. I don't think most people really know, but actually, here's a side secret. So before, what you don't know, this is another thing you don't know, is I actually got a drone. So now we'll be able to get better drone footage of up above and show a bit better kind of detail of the landscape. But that's one thing we've been focusing on, is our upper portion, because that's where the Gabion is. That's where all of this is. And it's strategic in the way that it does actually sit warmer up top here during the wintertime compared to actually down below the hill. It's quite a temperature difference. You can feel it's like a wall of cold or whatever. It's very interesting. So part of that strategy for us was getting to the top of the hill. But then it is also, like you're asking, why we've really kind of focused on the earthworks more up here and not done so much down below, because that's in my thinking too, an assumption a little bit, is that we get more of the water gathered up here and soaking in. We actually potentially could be building up a spring down below in the future. Granted, that might take, maybe a decade, 10 years, a little over 10 years or something, but we could still, that would be a continuous water flow that we could develop here over time. And that really depends on our soil conditions, if we're able to get moisture penetrating down. So, but the more we do stuff, the more earthworks we build, the more the organic material we build, the soil and stuff, the more we get penetrating the vegetation we plant. So, I mean, it's pretty much basics. The more we do, in the responsible kind of right way, the more impact and the quicker pace that everything really starts to transform and kind of take shape. Nature responds pretty quick to stuff. That's the big thing. So nature's adaptive, and just the same, we can take example for ourselves in our plans, our strategies. We can be very adaptive. We don't need to be so rigid with our strategies. And that's why I do like permaculture and just like just the designing and kind of organizing aspect in that respect. But let's carry on here. Retracted message. Salty Sergio, what's going on? Love that saying. Yeah, what's going on, dude? Howdy, Nathan, man. What's going on? What's going on, man? Yeah, I appreciate everyone joining in for the live. I appreciate everyone's interaction. Really appreciate you guys' support. I know it might seem a little bit slow on stuff. We're only 2 people. That's the big thing. Only 2 people can get so much done. Like I said, we've got the rotational grazing we're doing. We're thinking about planting. We've got so much stuff. Anybody should know this stuff. Like, you know how much stuff goes into the season. It's like you get excited about wanting to do other stuff than the thing you've been kind of working on for the last year, kind of thing continuously. So a little change up in life. Everyone needs a little change up. Yeah, diversity, Asim. Diversity of vegetation attracts all kinds of insects insects good for doing their job on the way. I mean, that's the thing. We want diversity. And that it's kind of saying too, we want the good and the bad. We want a good majority of the good. We want a better, a bigger ratio of the good things. But we do need bad things, because without the bad, like pathogens and viruses and stuff, there'd be nothing for the good stuff to eat. So that's kind of part of it, when we're bringing in life, when we're creating an environment for diversity to come in, we, of course, are going to get things that we don't like. We're going to get mosquitoes. We're going to get, flies. We're going to get all this stuff. But that's kind of the important thing, is that those are examples that show the imbalance, that we're missing something. If we got too many mosquitoes, that's an indication that there's, not the predators, that you need more bats, you need more dragonflies. You need something that's either going to get those mosquitoes, or you're going to have to go a conventional route of doing some kind of a trap, or like an attractant or something like that. But that's also a strategy that can be implemented with your gardening, because you can plant a lot of things that can help, not 100% cure, but they can help detour a lot of those pests and insects and stuff like that. And then, that's kind of the thing for us, is that we do have bats. It's really cool. We have bats in the summertime, an abundance of bats. So we'll be building more bat houses to help attract more. But even with our basins and stuff that had water sitting, we didn't have a mosquito problem. Granted, we're in the desert. That's the thing. We're in the high mountain desert. We're in Arizona. So it's very dry. It's harder for mosquitoes to kind of take hold down here. So that's a little bit of a bonus for us. But there still is mosquitoes that fly around. There's still mosquitoes down here. Don't get that wrong. But we do have the abundance of bats and dragonflies. So that's kind of the thing we can look at, is like, oh, look, the water is attracting more of these bats and more of these dragonflies. Like, we need more water points. We need more of these water stations, basically, for attracting more of the wildlife. But I digress here. Friction hitch. I've been considering making biochar of banana peels for my very most degraded spots. Yeah, biochar, super great. It's going to be char. Remember that. It's char until you inoculate it. So if you make some compost, and then you make some compost tea, and then you spray that char, then you've got inoculated, you've got biochar right there. So until you get something that's living in it's just char. But biochar is definitely great. You don't want to go overboard with it. There's a time and a place. I think it's been a little bit exaggerated by the community a little bit, just the permaculture, all the organic gardening, just this promotion of it's the cure-all, it's the cure-all. It's a portion of the recipe. That's what I think I'll sum it up to. It's a portion of the recipe of building healthy soil, of building up diversity and carbon material and stuff like that. There's a lot of other benefits to creating your own char, but thinking that we need to, just put so much char everywhere. Just there's a lot of drawbacks to that, especially when we're doing it the first year, because it can actually suck out a lot of the nutrients. Because think about what the char does; it's absorbing. So the first kind of year or two, depending on the particle size, it's doing a lot of absorbing. So it's not that you can't put that into your garden bed right away or your landscape and start planting into it. You just have to acknowledge that what it's doing is absorbing in the beginning. So you have to acknowledge that you're going to have to be putting more nutrients into the soil in that beginning. So more dry amendments or whatever, because that's what I do essentially. I try to supplement a little bit, at least, for what that char or material could be taking away from. So that's a strategy in itself. Yeah, do that. Potassium. Yeah, potassium from the banana peels, char. There are a lot of companies, these waste companies, from the material that they're making commercially. What were we were using rice hull, charred rice hulls. So there's a lot of different charred materials you can use out there. So that's the really cool thing. I mean, you can char just about almost anything out there, any organic material. So that's kind of the cool part. But just know that with the different materials, like what Friction Hitch was saying, the potassium, you're going to get different kind of nutrient values in each of those different chars. Only slightly. I mean, it's not like a huge nutrient value, because the char is really just for the carbon material, because fungi they really like carbon material. So that's really good carbon, good fungi food, I mean. And then it's also housing for the fungi, but also the bacteria. So the microbe life, it provides basically a giant apartment megatropolis place for them all. So that's the cool part. And then it just gets better with age. So each year it's actually, don't quote me on this, but I thought I was reading something about it does double its holding capacity or its surface area kind of every year. Or its holding capacity, not its surface area, its holding capacity. So it's like the first year it could absorb 1 gram. So then the next year it's able to absorb like 2 grams and so on and so forth. So because that carbon is constantly breaking down as well. So it's creating more. So it is creating more surface area. So the more it breaks down, the more surface area it has, the more room for more microbes, more life to attach and eat and all that good stuff. And then for moisture to absorb into. So yeah, definitely Friction Hitch. Shout out to the Zuni people. They have been super great. They've been real great to just culture in general, to all of us. I mean, they've influenced a lot of things. Not just with the Zuni bowls and the rain catchment stuff. Think about if they wouldn't have been a part of the history of the world. I mean, we wouldn't even know about the Zuni people, the culture, a lot of the practices, the growing stuff, all that. There'd be a lot missing. So, Fremont poplar eat a lot of water, but is native. Friction Hitch, you got a lot of stuff to say. That's okay. I did read a couple. I'm gonna peel through here. Is building like this in New England, Mr. Dunpeel, is building like this in New England possible? Taking the weather conditions into consideration, obviously. If you're talking about like the Gabion Wallapini, building like that, it's totally possible. Depends, I'm sure, on your own building code stuff in the area, but it's totally possible. It might depend a little bit on the materials in your area, because for our sake, the really defining factor of why we even did the Gabion baskets was because we have the abundance of rocks. So you can see that we've already filled all of our Gabion baskets. I mean, that's so much rock. But at the same time, you could kind of see it behind me. There's still rock back there. There's so much rock everywhere. I mean, you trip over rocks. Once the rains come, there's still rocks that get uncovered and stuff like that. So we have a lifetime worth of rocks here. It almost seems like rocks just grow out of the ground. Yep, Shawnee grows, right? It's an ingredient. It is an ingredient. All these things are ingredients. All these variables, especially like the earthworks, like the demi-lunes and the swales. These are all just ingredients. They aren't, the sole ingredient. To make flour or to make dough, you need flour and you need water at the least. So it's not just one material that makes dough into bread and stuff like that. It's the same aspect looking at greening a desert or kind of reclamating a degraded area. There's multiple ingredients. We don't need to just think inside the box. That's in box thinking is what only one. I only need to do one thing and that's it. That can be pertaining to situations. Like I was saying earlier, the people in Africa that on the green wall that are doing these demi-lunes, think about, they're having to organize hundreds of people, all these villagers that have no idea what any of this stuff is, or that it's going to yield any results. So they're having to explain these things to people that are brand new to all of this, and not to mention organize everyone to do this on a mass scale. So it makes sense to just do one thing because you only got to, for hundreds of people, you only got to explain one thing one time and everybody gets it and they can tell everybody else. But when you start getting into diversity, this is where, it's really more so when you're working with people, like with consulting and stuff, we can get more intricate with the design. We don't have to just stick with one thing. And this is our personal property. So, and kind of our business property at the same time. So we want to showcase the diversity, just the multi strategies and practices that there are, because there's more than just one. There's more than one way to grow soil. I'll refrain from saying the other slogan. Mutant 1, have you found any source of local clay on your property? This would be a highly valuable asset if you create a kiln. Yeah, of course. In our washes, actually, we might have more of a clay content. Just the state in general, look, our environment here in general, very sandy. Everything's been blown away, for a long time now. So we're really looking at very low percentages of clay content. But at the same time, with all of the caliche and stuff and the sand, even when we add even just like a little bit of Portland, or if we had a kiln, we actually could take a lot of that caliche and we could fire that. And that basically is lime for creating mortar and stuff like that. So it's kind of like I was saying, we can't stick ourselves in a box. Like that's one thing, we don't want to necessarily waste our time trying to look around for all the little bits of clay and stuff. When we do have material that if we just work with it in the right way, we could do similar stuff like with working with clay. The stuff we have in general. I mean, this stuff works super well. The outdoor rocket stove we built, that was just water and some of the sifted stuff from here. And when you go and knock on that, I mean, it feels and sounds just as hard as concrete. So, and that's just stuff from the land. We didn't really look, all we did was walk 10 feet out, sift it, and Neka mixed all this up, but mixed the water and now fired it off of the rocket stove. And that thing is, it's super hard. I can stand and jump on top of that stove and stuff. So, I mean, when we can really gauge our environment and take example too, like with the natives. I think that's a big thing with the Zuni people. They really showed the example of not just what they did with the Zuni bowls and stuff, but it's more, the example of how they worked with their surroundings. They worked with the material that they had on hand. They didn't travel out miles or go, to the big cities or the big villages to source a lot of the material for the building. And so that just more so goes into, what are your values, at least, kind of thing. If you don't want to, be searching around on the property for materials kind of thing, if you want to make it easier on yourself, that's just a strategy in itself. The strategy is if you have the funds and the money and you can pay someone to do the work for you, or you can get better material that's already pre-made, that's, way nicer than maybe you could experiment with. That's totally fine. That's fine for anybody to be able to do. And that's just with everybody's values. Everyone's going to be different. But I think it's just like the box thing. We don't want to limit ourselves, just because of how we're building. And it's like, well, I can't build that way where I live. And it's like, don't limit yourself in that way, because you just need to be creative. There's other ways to achieve what you want to, as far as building or, remediating degraded land and stuff like that. And that's the beauty of nature, is that there's so many different examples of how we can do similar things. Essentially, like I was talking about with the green wall, the demi-lunes, compared to like with the swales or the basins, when we really look at all this stuff, it all does the same basic thing. It's slowing and stopping and soaking water. That's the main function of all of this. But they're tools, just like a toolbox. They're different tools. Some of them could do similar things, but all of them have their specialty. So it's like swales. Obviously, if we have a huge open area, why would we just do like a basin, like one basin, or do a bunch of basins? It'd make more sense just to do a swale that cuts all the way across and levels and does all that water stuff. So I digress again. Mutant One has a great comment. You guys are clearly clay gurus. How do you go about that? Well, no, I wouldn't say gurus. I would say the guru, which is Neka, because she's the one that does all of the mixing and all of that. I hardly do that. I was doing a lot of the concrete mixing. And then I did a lot of the rammed earth stuff. That didn't take too much thought for me. So Neka knows a little bit more. She's more dialed in on the mix that works, at least for her. Everyone's going to be different, obviously, but she definitely shows in her videos. So you definitely should check out her channel. She, has her time lapses, but also talks about how she mixes, why she mixes it, the finer details of stuff. So, how do you go about that? Really is a plain and simple answer of experience and trial and error. That's, I think, the biggest thing. What's anybody else that watches this channel? What are you guys looking for besides entertainment? You're looking for solutions. You're looking for ideas. I think it's on a similar mindset, to myself at least, that, when I'm watching YouTube, the stuff that I'm watching, at least, I'm trying to get ideas there. I already know a lot of these basics and stuff like that. So it's kind of, once you know the basics, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the ideas, the interconnectedness of stuff, maybe that maybe you didn't think of before, or that you couldn't think of. And that's what I like doing when I'm doing consulting. So if James Barros is watching, hopefully he's watching. I got to email you back because he's got a consultation that he wants to schedule here. And I've got the drone now, man. So we'll be able to do a little bit better scoping out of the property and get a better idea of stuff. Excuse me. So that's kind of, the big thing is really just observing. And I think the being adaptable part is really important, just when we're looking at what we can do and what we can't do. What we think is within our level of possibilities for what we can do on our properties and stuff like that. So that's where these strategies just all together, it really, like I've said a whole lot of times, I'm going to be a broken record on that. Observation is one thing, but it's individual. Every situation is unique. Everyone's scenario is unique. And just what you do, what you want to do, your values, your goals, everyone's different. So everyone's going to be doing different stuff. Everyone wants different ideas, different earthworks, different ways to combine these things that work for themselves and their property. So Rain Dance Ranch, I think it's good to pick and choose where you spend money versus build with available land resources or big piles of stuff. It is, that's a big thing. You do need to choose. That's a strategy in itself. Is I guess just for our example, like that was a big thing. I wanted to build the Earthship design because I knew the function. We've had experience with it. I know it works and stuff. But the big thing is the tires. One thing I didn't want to waste my time on coming down here was running around town trying to find out where I can get the tires and find all the right size tires that I needed. So even for a project like this, you need a few hundred tires to build up a big wall, so that's a big drawback, I think. So if we're wanting to build this way, I think that's why you need to be flexible and adaptable and not be rigid, because if you don't have the abundance of rocks like you do, then building a Gabion wall might be out of the question, because it's going to cost you money to bring that stuff in. And who wants to waste money on rocks? No one wants to do that unless it's a really nice looking rocks like the granite piece that we got. But there's if you're looking at that, it's like if you want the earthship design, you don't have to do the Gabion baskets. You could do earth bags, you could do a rammed earth wall, you could do adobe walls. What am I thinking? Cinder blocks. So that's where we can. It really is taking example of the natives in that respect, where, if we're wanting to develop our property or develop a home or a homestead kind of in a similar fashion like we are, like that's the example that I've taken is, the natives, they worked with what they had. They used the materials they had on hand, what was in the area. They grew the plants, the fruits and vegetables that worked in the area. They promoted that stuff. So it's a little bit of that example that we really should take in our approach for building and also our landscape as well. So that's kind of the deal with why the Gabion Wallapini has been built in the fashion that it has, is really been dictated by the resources, at least for the design of it. The concept itself, the earthship design, that's universal. But when it comes to the design, that's where it becomes custom. And that's where we've taken that step using the materials and building what we have. So if you haven't seen the updated video, we'll have the new video next weekend for the rocket stove. But if you haven't seen any of the house videos, you'll have to look back. Mr. Dunpeel, there's a surprising amount of boulders and stones in New England. The amount of water that is available to collect is crazy. The rain and the humidity would make the mudding process challenging. Depending. And I guess that might be kind of the drawback too, is that maybe you want to do the stone. If you have the stone, that's fine. But if you have the mud, you could have the mud. But if you're talking about the moisture and that being a problem, then you might want to just consider mixing more of a soilcrete. So mixing a bit of Portland, regular Portland, not the premix concrete, but Portland into your soil mix. So that's where you can watch Neka's videos to get a better idea of the mixture ratio that she does that works, because that can really help with the drying time, especially just adding that bit of Portland. If you're running into humidity and that drying problem, the Portland would really help speed up the drying process, because that Portland just creates a chemical process that starts kind of because of the process, there's heat that's generated, so it kind of contributes to that overall drying. So just that could be a consideration. I'm not telling you to do that, but that's a consideration. Whims of Mim. Are you going to use your drone to show off parts of your property and your works? Or if you've said that before, I can only catch videos sporadically. That's all right. That's pretty much the goal. I just got that. So I have the Greening the Desert series. I have a couple videos that don't have drone footage, but the next videos will have more drone footage. So we'll get way better views on stuff. I'm super excited for it. Darren and Susan, what's up? Glad to have you guys on. Glad you guys are always commenting, and appreciate your guys' support. Sorry, seriously, check out Friction Hitch. The USGS LiDAR goes down to 1 meter. So awesome. Yeah. There's a lot. Plenty of resources looking at government weather, all the USGS stuff. All these things are variables that can really help us get a better gauge of the approach we want to take on a property, the approach on remediating or fixing a degraded landscape, building a homestead, stuff like that. So all these tools, there's so many tools that we can use that really can help us. And we just need to put the effort in, because there's a lot of these free tools that it just takes a little effort for us to look for them, and we'll definitely be rewarded with that knowledge. That's stuff that we can learn. And basically, as long as we kind of keep it refreshed in our mind, that's forever. So that's a really key aspect of knowledge, is that it's way more valuable, because that's something that really can't be destroyed unless you wipe someone's memory like Men in Black or something like that. But let's see. Sip of my OJ. Get some more vitamin C. Made it to a live stream, Jason Johnson. Yeah, appreciate it, dude. I'm glad you made it. I'm wondering, maybe I'll put out a poll, like a little voting poll. Should I do the live stream maybe a little bit later? Would like noon work better for people? I just do 11 o'clock because it seems like, at least, some people are up. It's not exactly noon. So I don't know, people are doing stuff on the weekends. I try to do the live at 11, just in case people are just sitting around and before they go out and do stuff or something like that. Now you've got ideas. So if you've sat down for this, now you've got some ideas. Now you can get out after the live stream. Now you can go outside and start doing some stuff. If it's not, if it's not too cold. I mean, we're in the beginning of February. I mean, I'm in my sweatshirt, but I'm in like my pajama pants right now. Honestly, and seriously, but it's in the upper 60s right now. We've been in the 70s. Right after that snowstorm, it jumped right back up. We got super warm, so it's been in the 70s. I'm still in sandals. I've almost been a year in sandals now. So where it's pretty interesting weather with this La Nina, I think. So I'm hoping that maybe end of February into March we'll get a bit more rain action, but that has yet to be seen. We'll really want to be observing, because this all just really takes into account what we're having to think ahead and kind of prepare for. Because if this kind of stuff is happening right now, we do want to be somewhat prepared for the future. As I spit into the screen, we want to be prepared for the future, because this is obviously, if it's happening now, this is going to be not necessarily a common occurrence, but this will be an occurrence that does happen. So rainwater harvesting, this is what we need to definitely be keeping an eye on, and why I am keen on documenting when we get rain and how much and stuff like that, because this all will take into account into the future. Winds of Nim, that's sweet. I think drone footage definitely helps to put things into context. No, it does. And I'm super impressed with the drone footage I've been kind of playing around with. So I'll be super excited. It'll be way better kind of a vantage point. I think better kind of idea I think you can get of the landscape. It's just a better vantage point, I think, compared to me swinging the camera on the ground. So Rain Dance Ranch says there's a great map place in Central Phoenix. I believe it's on Indian School somewhere around 32nd Street. I bought some very cool maps there. The guy there was the cartographer. Okay, yeah. Yeah, there's definitely all kinds of maps. You can get topography maps and stuff. You can go to like your county website. A lot of times they'll have like the GIS map that you can toggle between the settings, and it'll show kind of the contours and then the elevations and stuff like that. So you can get an idea of maybe the contours that you have on your landscape as well from up above on satellite. And then there are also other programs too that will show you, because they'll get information from the maps and stuff, but they'll be able to line out contour lines and stuff, and you can space them out to like 1 foot or 2 foot kind of thing. Maybe that's kind of, I save that for if I'm doing consulting, because that stuff I can write down. I can show people in person like how those sites work and stuff like that. So it's getting closer to that time of the season. So if anybody is considering about landscape design, your gardening, if you need help with anything like that, definitely email Growtreeorganicsyt at gmail.com for scheduling a permaculture consultation. We do Zoom chats as well, but I prefer in-person consultations. You'll just get way more bang for your buck, essentially. You'll get way more detail, way more explanations. It'll be way more worth it. So if anyone is in the Arizona area, just in general, it kind of depends. We'd have to discuss on location, but anyone in the Arizona area, yeah, if you're looking or interested in permaculture, or have ideas and are just a little bit confused with the designing aspect, I really do like to help people organize the ideas that they already have. So that's kind of one nice thing that I can bring to the table, is the organization aspect, and just kind of bringing a lot of your ideas together, at least. And then I also have a ton of different ideas. If you're brand new to all this stuff, your mind might be blown a little bit. There's a lot of stuff to this world of permaculture. There's so much to talk about, so many exciting things. Yeah, friction hitch observation is getting really scary, because who knows if your observations will tell you much of anything about the future. That's where, observation is really about the present moment. That's I think the truth about that, at least to me. It's present moment thinking. And present moment thinking, I'm seeing this big flock of birds flying over, if you heard them. But that is present moment thinking, and it's more so that we have to process our own thoughts and kind of the probabilities, essentially, of the observations we're making, because we can take in consideration cause and effect, basically. And I think there's a little bit more detail to that, and gets in maybe into philosophical stuff. So. But Yeah, observation can be kind of deceiving, and it really depends on the person. It depends on how you're observing. It depends on your own thoughts, just your mind state, essentially. Um, Metting out. Metting out one, if that's hopefully I probably botched it. This year I will finally be able to buy some land in South Apache, County, leaving Washington in a few months when the weather warms. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, wait till the weather warms, because like the mountain ranges and stuff might be pretty sketchy. So that's awesome, dude. That's awesome to hear. You'll be able to get some land and start your own greening the desert project journey. Friction Hitch, I'm gonna warn you just a little bit on the advertising, because you can start your own channel and you can advertise land on your own channel. Yeah, I'm not a free advertising billboard, just to let you know. I understand you want to help people. That's fine. But just keep in mind, we're not a billboard company here. Jason Johnson, I've been watching my land for over a decade. I have growth. Oh, I've yet to see changes of the landscape. Oh, my thing's in the way. I can't see. You've just been I guess that's one thing. You've just been watching your land for over a decade, and you've been watching the growth that's happening? Have you done some earthworks or anything like that? And there's nothing happening? Because that's the misconception you're going to have, is thinking that nature's going to change in front of your eyes. I mean, it takes a long time. It definitely, things, when it comes to nature has no time frame. So things take centuries, thousands of years, millennia. They take a long time for things to change and things to develop. So appreciate it, cousin Jackson Travel. Yeah, do you got plans? What are you doing? You got your truck. I thought you had traded your van for the truck, didn't you? So are you driving anywhere? Driving anywhere fun? Are you coming to Arizona? Are you driving to California? Where are you driving to? Who knows? Friction Hitch, that's fine. If you don't want I mean, that's fine. And I totally understand. I'm only saying just careful, because I did that last live and you kind of just blasted the comment section with about your property and stuff. And have you tried like posting it on like landforsale.com or something like that? Or Craigslist even? That's just the big thing. You've got a lot of acreage. That's kind of one consideration. Just think about the audience of people, the kinds of people that are looking at 200 acres kind of thing. Now, if you said like, oh, I have 200 acres, but it's all split up in 10-acre parcels, people might be a bit different on that aspect. So it's a fantastic response. Did you steal my ravens? Oh no, those are those titmouse birds. We have a lot of titmouse birds, and then we also have those Arizona bluebirds. They're not blue jays, I don't think, but they're like the bluebirds. They're really fat. But then we do have robins. The robins have started coming around, and then there was chickadees. I thought maybe they were the titmouse. I'm not too sure. But we've got definitely lots of bird life going on. We've had a lot since we've had the basin, like the big basin over off to the side and stuff. Since we've had water accumulating here since last year, I feel like there's been a lot more bird activity. So it's pretty interesting and pretty cool. Jason Johnson, no, I've done quite a bit of earthworks and I've seen no growth and I've seen things change. So you have done earthworks and you've seen things change. Well, if you've seen things change, isn't that positive? That's kind of one thing. Have you been putting compost in? Have you been putting cover crops or any native grasses or native plants? Have you been planting stuff? Because that's kind of, it's like one thing. We can do these earthworks and all this stuff. It's still going to take time. It's still going to take the nature to kind of acclimate, to adapt and build everything up. It's a process. That's just the process of nature. So we can't rush this process. And even if we are putting these implements in, like Earthworks and compost and rotational grazing, there's still time that it needs to be taken for the vegetation to grow. And that's even like with the video. I mean, we went, almost 6 months without significant rain. So nothing has been soaked here. We wouldn't plant anything right now or beforehand even. So nothing would even grow. And that's just even part of the aspect of looking at our property is we do have to kind of accept that, like, this is a part of the weather pattern. So we have to find out, how do we work with this? What are the solutions? And really the solutions are, building up our soil, just continuing to do what we're doing, because we'll see the results. We'll see this stuff work over time. And all beginnings are difficult and hard. And that's something that we all don't get to perceive is, how the earth even developed after it was done being a molten lava, piece of floating rock, essentially. How long, millions, billions of years for everything to develop to what it is right now. So that's when we're looking at, regreening stuff, remediation, rectifying, all this stuff, even to begin with, to get to the state it was, took a long time. It took a whole lot of years, many, many years for all this stuff to get to where it was. And then for us to come in, that's the only perspective we have. We're humans that are only here for a snap of the fingers. 100 years isn't very much time, even for the longest portion, if we can get to that longevity in our lifespan. But even still, that's such a short time span compared to nature and what everything else is doing around here. Yeah, Metting Out one, looking to buy 30 to 35 acres. Keep looking, man. Yeah, talk to Friction Hitch. You guys should exchange emails or something like that. Figure out how to contact each other. So maybe Friction is willing to portion out some land. You're not selling land, Friction. Well, what are you doing then? I want to help other people with their land to steward. You're not. Well, you said you have 200 acres of land, so you're offering land to people? Is that the deal then? I mean, are you offering people chunks of land? That'd be good to specify if that's a big thing. Because that's something I'm actually kind of looking at right now, is actually looking at another piece of property so that there can be this airplane flying over. But I'm trying to get this property, or looking at another property, because that will be the property for doing a lot of the workshops. So we can have more people. We can get, you guys, anybody that's willing, we can get you guys out there. And this is a place where it's just more so, we're trying to kind of keep our privacy at our place a little bit. And the YouTube is a little bit of showing that. We're not opposed if we're making friends, if we know you enough, kind of, and the trust thing. So that's a whole different thing of coming to the property. But a whole separate property is no problem, because we all can gather there. It'll be a strictly workshop place. We'll just be doing earthworks, demonstrations, all this stuff that we're doing here, but just more in a classroom-ish kind of hands-on learning setting on a separate property. But that'll contribute to a community, but also the community growth of that property. So we'll be able to see how, all these people helped, we all contributed, and then it developed into something great. So it's kind of a future goal that I have. Weather's been amazing here. Yep, definitely. I'm scrolling through. Yeah, Friction Hitch, if you've got a YouTube channel or email, definitely put that out so people can get in contact with you, especially if you're proposing the things that you are. If you're saying you have 3 properties. Mr. Dunpeel, did you post a vid of the water filter build? I did. I didn't go into full detail, but there is the video that is in the description link from the previous. You can look at it. The thumbnail picture, it shows me holding up the clear water and then the dirty water or whatever. And it's like the off-grid water filter system kind of thing. So yeah, I have that video. How many acres is the Growtreeorganics project? Sorry if it's well known. That's all right, whims of Mim. How many acres? We're sitting on 10 acres on our personal property, but because we're kind of working with our neighbors and stuff, we kind of almost in, so to speak, are sitting on 40 acres. So we kind of feel like we have 40 acres total altogether. And that's with working with our neighbors. So hopefully, yeah, whims of Mim, that's what we're working with. 10 acres, 10 whole acres. It's a lot of property, honestly, especially for two people. And just like the regreening the desert project aspect, there's a lot of bare area and a lot of sand and stuff for this. Jason Johnson, I'm building community of people on my ranch. Best of luck to you, man. I mean, I think that's the biggest speed bump that a lot of people run into is just building the community in general, just the people that you're bringing to the community, the people that you're wanting to join the community. I think you need to find the right people. I think that's the biggest thing I would probably observe on that is finding the right people. Not everyone's on the same page about what a community is or the expectations. And not to mention, we're all different. We all live our lives differently. Some people take offense or get pissed off, or it's like they don't like how some people live, when it comes certain things. And then when it comes to money, and there's a whole lot. So definitely be careful, find the right people. And it's a process, just like this greening the desert. Mr. Dunpeel, yeah, okay, I'll look for it. Yeah, it's we made a cookies floor that actually has the link. Oh no, the link's in that video, I think, for that water filter. But yeah, you should be able to scroll back. It's like in the earlier beginnings of our Arizona adventure here. So you shouldn't have to necessarily look too far. Duncan Law, in this environment, do you have anything that you can chop and drop for soil building, or will that come later? That's actually something I kind of touched on in a way earlier video. I might need to kind of relabel it so it kind of makes a bit more sense on what that video is about. But I did go over just the chop and drop that we can do right now, even without us planting any of the stuff that we want to. You can see behind me that we're in an area that has a lot of juniper trees. So we actually are in the process. I've been slowly doing this like little bits at a time. And actually I do need to do more of it more for the floor, because we're doing the cookie floor. So I actually have been chopping branches to make all the little cookie pieces. But that is part of the chop and drop approach here is all these trees need maintenance. All these trees need prune. This looks like a giant bush. It doesn't even look like a tree, even though, that thing, that overtowers me. That's like 20 feet tall right there. So in comparison, so you can see, yeah, so you can see how tall that tree is really tall. So that's kind of the goal, especially with all these other trees. We really want to maintenance this old growth forest, because that's what this is an old growth juniper forest. In essence, it's kind of a monoculture. Different species of juniper, but we will be chopping branches. We'll be trimming these trees up for organic material to get into the ground, also for firewood for ourselves, for the rocket mass heater bench. But then also it's kind of just making these look more like trees. That's like what I was saying. It looks like a big giant bush. So we can trim, like this branch, we can trim a lot of this up and actually give it a nice trunk, and then just have more of the top and actually make it look like a tree. And then in that way, we'll actually kind of help with this bottom portion. You see, I got all the solar stuff right there. But this bottom portion will actually open up, be more exposed to sun, but be more exposed to rain and water penetration, because these branches block a whole lot. So, and then the organic material getting into the ground, and then the tree itself won't need as much nutrients and water, because now we've kind of cut off a lot of the limbs that it was putting energy into. So lots of stuff still to do around here. I mean, that's like what I was saying. The focus has been the Gabion Wallapini, but getting this finished, now this kind of actually helps with getting everything else outside of the structure finished. So it's just like our own lives, getting philosophical here. It's just like our own lives. We're working internally on our mindset so that we can express outwardly, the things that we've worked on and what we've improved on. So that's here. We're working on the Gabion. This is the internal. So it'll be a starting place for plants, vegetation, and such, and enables us to expand outwardly to work on the rest of the Greening the Desert project. Let's go down the list some more. Friction Hitch. I know that you might think I'm a spammer, but the truth of the matter is I'm afraid of all you. Yeah. Well, that's fine, dude. That's all I was saying. I'm just saying, just don't be spamming like the comments section with how you've got land and stuff and blah blah. Just put out your email, dude. Put your email out so people can contact you and stuff um and stuff like that. So Winds of Mim, Pine Meadows. Yep, he's shrinking. Jason Johnson, exactly, but it is a challenge. I don't fear a challenging project. Yeah, I have a few people now. I had to kick one guy out, but I learned from him. It's not so bad at all. Yeah, I mean, with all the people, you're bound to find somebody. Plenty of fish in the sea. It just makes it a little bit more specific on what you're looking for. Like with the community, this is what we're talking about, the community building, bringing people in and stuff. There's plenty of the right people out there. You just got to find them. That's the only catch. And sometimes you have to sort through the weeds a little bit of all just the stupidity and stuff. But that's all it is an example, of those kinds of people you don't want in essence. I think, Friction Hitch, I know you're a friend and, I know you're an ally. So, I just that's all I was saying. Just don't plaster. This content is about greening the desert and all that stuff. We just don't want it to be a video all about advertising, basically. And like I said, just put your email out. Let people know if they want to get a hold of you, if they're interested in stuff like that. That's all you need to do. Because people will be interested and get in contact you if they are or not. That's kind of the deal. That's a big thing why it's like I don't necessarily promote the permaculture consulting. I do put, email me about that. And I do kind of mention it once in a while, but it's not like I necessarily, sit the whole video and advertise like I'm a permaculture consultant. So if you need to do this, blah, 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 blah. Like I actually more so kind of like that is the side job I do enjoy doing that, and I want to be doing more of that with more people. But I also want to show the work. I want to show, because not many people know me. And if you don't know me, why would you contact me for consulting if you don't even know me, don't know any of the work that I've done, all that stuff. So this is essentially, we're building up a lot of the portfolio, you could say, of my ideas, the potentials, and just the kind of criteria you can expect from me. If there's any more questions, Jackson Travel thinking about Starlink at all? Possibly. We're definitely considering kind of like satellite internet or possibly Starlink. I'm a little on the fence about the Starlink, but we'll see. It's coming in the future. Gorilla Grassroots, been watching the vids. Pretty amazing stuff, mate. Keep it up. Appreciate it, dude. Really appreciate the support. Whims of Mims. Sorry, the shrinking was just a joke when you moved back to show the scale of that tree. Oh no, that's totally fine. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, look how close I am to the camera. And then look how, it's like, you'd think the tree is only this tall, but then that tree really, this tree really is tall when I really come back to it. So I'm running out of things to answer. There's no more questions. Everyone is chatting amongst themselves. I'm glad everyone can communicate and kind of chat in this, in the chat room here during the lives. This is the best place for you guys, because you guys have now kind of formed this little community a little bit within this channel, I think a little bit. So, Friction Hitch, that's all I'm saying. It's just like, don't, spam don't spam all of this, the comment section with, about the land and stuff. It's fine if you want to just mention it and say, here's my email. This is, there's this land, blah, blah, blah. Just do a couple of those and that'll be totally fine. But we just don't want to be stacking the comment section with all that. So I do appreciate your support. I appreciate your intentions as well. And that's just even what I was saying in the very beginning. We just got to be careful with our strategies. We can have good strategies, but just implement them in the wrong way. So that's all I'm saying about what you just said. But with that being said, I'm working on the Greening the Desert project series of videos. So those are coming out soon. especially because we are going to be getting into the gardening season. Neka is ready to start seeds. I mean, it's warm. It's over 70 degrees right now. I'm about ready to take the sweatshirt off. I'm starting to sweat. So we're still working on the rocket mass heater bench, but we will have the first half of the video this weekend. So that'll be showing a lot of the structure itself. I'll kind of actually go over the design and the concept of this, because this is actually going to be way different than most people's rocket mass heater benches. We're not doing tubes. We're not doing all the snaking tubes like most people do. So I'm going to leave it up to people's imagination on what we could be doing for the design on that. Otherwise, I really appreciate everyone being here, everyone that stuck around. Appreciate your guys' support. If you're not a member of the Green Guardians, I definitely encourage you to join. And it's more so just for the support of the channel. Trying to do more. There's a lot going on. There's a lot that I have to do. I almost need like a little film crew to help with some of that. But I will try to keep posted on some of the more insightful stuff for the upper tiers, and then also kind of the behind the scenes content for everybody else. So it's definitely a way you can support us. The super chats are also a way you can support us. And you can go to our Amazon wish list as well and see the stuff. If there's anything you might be interested in helping us out with, we'd really appreciate it. I honestly just appreciate everyone's support. Anybody that's watching the channel, watching our progress through all of this, I think that's been probably the most exciting part, is being able to show kind of the example of just at least how we're building things, but then also our approach at, greening a desert, and just with our goals and just the overall journey. So thanks everyone for being a part of the live today. Anyone that stuck around, thank you for being around, and your support as well, if I can say that enough times. So we'll be working on new videos. You'll see new videos, and we will see everybody in the next video and in the next live for next weekend. Peace.